The story you think you know about the Roloff farm buyout is just the tip of the iceberg. We've all seen the tension, the arguments, the heartbreaking decision for Amy to sell her half of the property she built and raised her family on. But what if I told you the official story is a carefully constructed lie? What if the number Amy was offered, the number that forced her hand and ultimately led to the deep rift in the family, wasn't just a lowball offer, but the result of a deliberate multi-million dollar fraud? We have received a series of but highly detailed insider reports that paint a shocking picture of betrayal, greed, and a secret deal designed to cheat Amy Roloff out of her legacy. This isn't just about a business negotiation gone wrong. This is the story of how Caryn Chandler, in a desperate bid to secure her own empire, allegedly orchestrated a sophisticated scheme to steal millions from the mother of Matt's children. This is a story that has been kept under wraps, but the details are starting to leak out. If what we're hearing is true, it will change everything you thought you knew about the final days of the Roloff family farm as we knew it. So buckle up, because this is the LPBW update you won't find anywhere else. And before we dive into the sordid details of this alleged conspiracy, do me a favor. If you believe in uncovering the truth and you want to support our deep dives into the stories that happen when the cameras are off, hit that like button, subscribe to LPBW Update, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss a single breaking story. You're going to want to be here for all of this. It all started at the sticking point. For months, the buyout negotiation was a deadlocked war of attrition. Publicly, it was presented as a simple disagreement on value. Amy, emotionally and financially invested for over 3 decades, saw the farm for what it was: a thriving, multifaceted business. It wasn't just acres of dirt, it was a brand, a tourist destination recognized globally, a cash cow during pumpkin season, and the setting of a hit television show. Her valuation, which sources say was well into the high single-digit millions, reflected this reality. She saw the sweat equity, the brand identity she helped build, and the future earning potential. In her eyes, she was selling a piece of a dynasty. Matt, on the other hand, was being heavily influenced by Caryn. He began to parrot a different narrative, one focused on the farm as a simple agricultural property. He started talking about it in terms of raw acreage, operational costs, and the burdens of maintenance. The magic, the brand, the tourist income, all the things he used to champion, were suddenly being downplayed. He accused Amy of being emotional, of overvaluing her memories. Caryn, according to our insider reports, was constantly in his ear, reinforcing this idea. She would allegedly say things like, "She's letting her feelings cloud her judgment, Matt. We have to be realistic. It's just a farm." The constant pressure was working. Matt, eager to end the contentious chapter and move on with his new life with Caryn, began to believe that Amy's price was truly unreasonable. The impasse became a chasm. Neither side would budge. To break the stalemate, they agreed on what seemed like a fair and logical solution. They would hire a neutral, third-party certified appraiser. This expert would assess the property, the business, the brand, and deliver a definitive, unbiased market value. Both Matt and Amy agreed to abide by the findings. It was supposed to be the final word, the objective truth that would allow them to part ways cleanly and fairly. Amy felt a sense of relief. Finally, a professional would see the farm's true worth, validating her position and ensuring she received a fair share of the legacy she had poured her life into. She had no idea that the process she was entrusting her future to was about to be hijacked. This is where the story takes a dark turn. According to our sources, Caryn saw this as a golden opportunity. She volunteered to take the lead in finding the perfect appraiser. She told Matt and Amy, "Let me handle it. I have some contacts. I'll find the best, most reputable person for the job to make sure this is all above board. It sounded helpful, proactive. It was, in fact, the beginning of the alleged conspiracy. Caryn had no intention of finding a reputable firm. Our reports indicate that she immediately bypassed all the well-known, top-tier agricultural and commercial appraisal companies in Oregon. She knew they would come back with a number far too close to Amy's, a number that would empower Amy and drain the farm's capital that Caryn now viewed as her own future. Instead, she allegedly used a discreet back-channel connection, a former business acquaintance with a reputation for creative problem-solving. Through this connection, she was put in touch with a man we'll call Mr. Dalton. Dalton wasn't a top-tier appraiser. He was a freelancer with a spotty record, a man known in certain circles for being flexible if the price was right. He had a state certification, which made him technically legitimate, but his reputation was questionable. There were whispers of past lawsuits, of deals where his appraisals conveniently matched the lowest possible number for a client who needed a tax write-off or a favorable buyout. He was exactly the kind of person Caryn was looking for, plausible on paper, but corruptible in practice. The secret meeting was allegedly set up with the kind of clandestine paranoia you'd see in a spy movie. It wasn't at an office. It was at a dimly lit booth in a truck stop diner, miles away from Roloff territory. Our source, who claims to have knowledge of the arrangement, described the scene in chilling detail. Caryn arrived with a large satchel. Dalton was already there, nursing a coffee. There was no small talk. Caryn laid out the proposition with cold efficiency. She explained that she needed an appraisal for a very specific, high-profile property. She told him there was a contentious divorce situation and that she needed the final number to come in under a very specific ceiling, a number that was millions below even the most conservative estimates of the farm's value. Then came the bribe. Our insider claims Caryn opened the satchel and revealed a thick manila envelope. Inside was a significant amount of cash, tens of thousands of dollars, a bonus for his cooperation. This was the down payment for the fraud. He would receive a second, even larger payment once the deal was done and Amy had signed off based on his report. But the cash wasn't the only tool of this deception. Caryn also handed him a second file. This one contained a doctored set of financial records for the farm. This wasn't an amateurish job. Caryn, having worked for Matt for years, had intimate knowledge of the farm's books. She knew exactly which numbers to manipulate. The fraudulent records she allegedly provided to Dalton were a masterclass in creative accounting. Pumpkin season revenue, the farm's biggest moneymaker, was systematically underreported. For example, she took the figures from a year with unusually bad weather and presented them as a typical season's earnings. High-margin items like the private tours, corporate event rentals, and merchandise sales were either completely omitted or their profits drastically reduced. On the expense side, she did the opposite. Normal maintenance costs were inflated. She allegedly fabricated invoices for major equipment repairs and emergency structural work that never happened. She created a paper trail that painted a picture of a struggling, barely profitable farm, a charming but financially draining hobby, rather than the lucrative tourist enterprise it truly was. She was handing him a pre-written script, a fraudulent foundation upon which he could build his fraudulent report. Dalton, seeing the cash on the table and the meticulously crafted false evidence, smiled and agreed. The deal was struck. A few weeks later, the fraudulent report arrived. It was a work of art in its own right, bound in a professional blue cover filled with charts, graphs, and official-looking jargon. It looked every bit the part of a legitimate expert analysis. Dalton had done his job well. The final valuation was shocking. millions less than what Amy believed was fair, and conveniently, just under the ceiling Caryn had dictated. To justify this absurdly low number, the report was filled with carefully selected lies and half-truths. It cited a general downturn in the agri-tourism market, a completely fabricated trend. It spoke of decreased agricultural viability due to supposed soil degradation, ignoring the farm's consistent bumper crops. It highlighted potential zoning challenges that were non-existent and exaggerated the impact of local competition. The most damning part of the report, the part that was a blatant and intentional falsehood, was the section on brand value. The Roloff brand, the name recognition from a globally syndicated television show that had been running for over a decade, the very thing that drew hundreds of thousands of visitors and millions of dollars in revenue, was valued at zero. Dalton's report dismissed it as intangible and non-transferable goodwill, a meaningless footnote. It was the equivalent of appraising Coca-Cola and valuing the brand at zero. It was a lie so audacious, so fundamentally dishonest, that it should have been an immediate red flag. For Matt, however, it was the answer he wanted to hear. He was tired of the fighting, tired of the emotional turmoil. The report, slick and professional, validated the narrative Caryn had been feeding him for months. It confirmed his manufactured belief that Amy was being unreasonable. He saw the official letterhead, the appraiser's signature and certification number, and he accepted it. "See, Amy," he likely said, holding the document like a shield. "This is what the expert says. It's not me, it's the market. This is the number." He wanted the process to be over, and this report was his ticket out. The possibility that Caryn, his partner, his trusted confidant, could be capable of such a profound betrayal simply did not enter his mind. Amy was blindsided. When she saw the number, her heart sank. It felt like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just low. It was insulting. It was a valuation that erased 30 years of her life, her work, her identity. She knew in her bones that it was wrong. Every fiber of her being screamed that this was a lie. But how could she fight it? Here was a thick, detailed report from a certified professional. It was filled with language she didn't fully understand, data she couldn't easily refute. Matt was holding it up as gospel. To argue against it made her look once again like the emotional one, the one who couldn't accept reality. She felt trapped, cheated, and utterly powerless. The expert report was a cage, and the door was slamming shut on her. This is where the story could have ended, with Amy reluctantly accepting a fraction of what she was owed, with Caryn and Matt securing the farm for a steal, and with the truth buried forever under a pile of fraudulent paperwork. But they made one critical miscalculation. They forgot about Chris Merrick. Chris, with his quiet demeanor, is often underestimated, but Chris has a long and successful career in real estate. He's not a farmer, but he knows property, he knows valuations, and he knows a scam when he sees one. When Amy showed him the report, her face a mask of defeat and confusion, Chris didn't just offer a comforting word. He asked to see the document. That night, while Amy slept, Chris sat at the kitchen table with a highlighter and a calculator, and he began to read. And the more he read, the angrier he became. It didn't take a forensic accountant to see the flaws. It just took a professional eye. The first thing that jumped out at him were the comparable properties, or comps. This is a standard part of any appraisal, where the appraiser compares the subject property to similar ones that have recently sold. The comps Dalton cited were, to put it mildly, a joke. Chris, with a few clicks on his laptop, could see it instantly. One comp was a foreclosed dairy farm in a different county with severe soil contamination issues. Another was a property not zoned for commercial or tourist activity, making any comparison to Roloff farms completely invalid. A third was a fraction of the size and located miles from any major highway. Dalton hadn't found comparable properties. He had cherry-picked, distressed, irrelevant properties, to artificially drag down the value. It was a classic amateur hour fraud technique that a layman might miss, but to a real estate professional like Chris, it was a glaring red siren. Then he got to the financial analysis. He saw the conveniently low revenue numbers and the absurdly high expenses. He didn't have access to the real books, but he had common sense. He knew what a successful pumpkin patch in Oregon could generate. He knew the kind of money a TV famous location could command for events. The numbers in the report didn't just seem low, they seemed impossible. And then he landed on the most egregious lie of all: the brand value, 0. Chris knew that the Roloff brand was arguably the farm's single most valuable asset. It was the engine that drove the entire business. To assign it a value of 0 was not just an oversight, it was a deliberate, malicious act of deception. He closed the report, the glossy cover feeling cheap and dirty in his hands. He went to Amy the next morning, his expression grim. He sat her down and laid it all out piece by piece. He showed her the fraudulent comps on his laptop. He explained the absurdity of the financial claims. He pointed to the $0 brand valuation and told her exactly what it meant. "Amy," he said, his voice firm but full of conviction, "this isn't an appraisal. This is a work of fiction. It's a document that was created with one purpose and one purpose only: to steal from you." For the first time in weeks, Amy felt a flicker of hope. She wasn't crazy. Her gut feeling was right. She had been cheated, but now she had someone in her corner who could prove it. The conversation that followed was a major turning point. Chris didn't just get angry, he got strategic. He told Amy they couldn't just argue, they needed to fight fire with fire, or, more accurately, fight lies with truth. He told her, "We need our own report. We need to hire the best, no questions asked. We need an appraisal so thorough, so respected, that it completely demolishes this piece of garbage." There was one problem: money. A top-tier commercial and agricultural appraisal for a property as complex as Roloff Farms would cost a small fortune, easily tens of thousands of dollars. It was money they would have to pay out of their own pocket with no guarantee of getting it back. It was a massive gamble. If, for some reason, the new appraisal came in low, she would be out the money and her negotiating position would be destroyed forever. This is where we must delve into some of the exclusive theories our sources are reporting, pieces of the puzzle that happen behind the scenes. Our first theory centers on Matt's state of mind. Was he a willing participant in this fraud, or was he a victim as well? The overwhelming consensus from our insiders is that Matt was not a co-conspirator. He was, as one source put it, the perfect mark. He was emotionally exhausted from the divorce, desperate to begin his new life with Caryn, and had a known blind spot when it came to trusting her judgment in business matters. Caryn allegedly exploited this, playing the role of the supportive, business-savvy partner who was just trying to protect him from Amy's unrealistic demands. He was, in essence, a pawn in Caryn's game, a tool she used to legitimize the fraud. His acceptance of the report wasn't born of malice towards Amy, but of a deep-seated desire for the conflict to end and a profound, misplaced trust in his new partner. The eventual revelation of Caryn's deceit would be for him a world-shattering betrayal. Our second exclusive theory concerns the cash for the kickback. Where did Caryn get a 5-figure sum of untraceable cash? This wasn't something you could just withdraw from an ATM. We're hearing reports that Caryn had been quietly liquidating some of her own pre-mat assets in the months leading up to the appraisal. A small stock portfolio, some jewelry, things that wouldn't raise any red flags on any shared financial statements with Matt. She was allegedly building a secret war chest, a fund to be used for this exact purpose. It shows a level of premeditation that is truly chilling.